It was the start of summer, and we had all just finished our first year of college. 5 other friends and I all decided to celebrate with some weed and mushrooms, as we hadn't tripped in a few months now. My previous experience with psilocybin mushrooms consists of about 20 trips total, with 5 of them being doses of over 3.5 dried grams. On this special night, though, we had to set the bar even higher, and decided to take a full dried quarter, 7 grams each. Little did we all know what we were all getting ourselves into. We decided to put on some tunes to set the vibes right, as we were beginning to come up. We played some board games together and laughed as the effects slowly began to creep up. The first thing we noticed as usual was that we all began to feel as light as a feather. Next, the walls started to breathe a bit, and we all began laughing hysterically. This went on for a while, until the hallucinations began picking up a little more. From this point on, my friends began to all look different around me. They began to take on a new, beautiful hue and vibrancy that I had never witnessed before. All of them looked so immaculate and flawless in that moment. The effects were beginning to come on quite strong now, and the conversation slowly began to lessen and lessen as we all began to trip a little harder than we were originally expecting. We decided to put the board games away at this point and just sit back, put something on the television, and see where the night takes us. I looked over at my cat Snicklefritz, who always loved sitting up on top of the piano in the living room. Once we made eye contact, he began walking over to me and took on a different look from how I've ever seen him before. He began to radiate these beautiful rainbow colors out from his fur, and looked absolutely majestic in that moment. I think he could tell that I was on something and was acting a bit weird. 2 hours had passed by at this point, and we had all reached the peak of our experience, yet it was only the beginning of the long night to come. By this point, the energy in the room began to take a turn from upbeat and positive to a bit of a darker vibe. It's hard to explain, but now all of my friends had a darker look to them instead of the beautiful vibrance that they were radiating earlier. I then heard a faint voice in my head say, "You aren't supposed to be here." I found this a bit strange, as it didn't feel like something that came from within myself. I looked over at my pet hamster in his cage, and he was now taking on a completely different look from before. He looked evil and sinister, just staring back at me. I blinked a few times, but to no avail. He still looked the same. Evil and staring right into my soul. Snicklefritz was also now no longer just looking like a regular cat. He was looking like a psychedelic tiger, roaming around in its natural habitat within this psychedelic space that we were currently inhabiting. One of my friends in the room then said, "I think I'm tripping a bit hard right now. Do you guys want to go somewhere and get some fresh air?" We weren't too close to anything in the immediate vicinity, but clearly nobody was in the current state of mind to be driving anywhere right now either. We opted to just step outside for a moment, making sure to stick close together and not have anyone get separated from the group, as best as we could currently comprehend. The trees also looked different than usual, and appeared to be very much alive and breathing with psychedelic patterns overlaying them. I then noticed what looked like something peering out at me from behind one of the trees. I absolutely must have been imagining this, as we were quite a distance from any other people locally. I asked my friends if they could see specifically what I was seeing behind the one tree, and they all said no. I decided to ignore it, and figured I must have been tripping out or just imagining things. It wasn't worth going to investigate further at this time of night. We then decided to go back inside the house, as it was starting to get a little chilly outside, as the temperature was beginning to drop. I made my way into the kitchen to grab a glass of water, and swore for an instant I could see something moving behind the fridge. I went to take a closer look, and upon second inspection, there was nothing there. It must have just been my vivid imagination playing tricks on me again. A couple other friends also grabbed some drinks from the kitchen as well, but but it seemed that a couple of them were having trouble drinking them properly without spilling it all over themselves in our current state. I peered into the living room to have a check on Snicklefritz, and I'm not even sure what he was doing at this point. I turned around and made my way back into the kitchen when I noticed a black figure standing there for a split second. I blinked a couple of times, and it was gone. Now by this point, I was starting to feel a little freaked out, as the vibes still felt a bit off in the house. It was now starting to feel like no matter what room I went into, there was something or things that were watching and studying my every move. I decided that I needed some alone time, so I headed upstairs to use the bathroom before wanting to go lay down in my bedroom for a bit. Upon arriving at the bathroom, it was getting harder to keep my balance at this point, as all of the walls were breathing and the house felt alive. I used the toilet and then went over to wash my hands at the bathroom sink. Upon looking into the mirror, it was not my own reflection that I saw. What I saw looking back at me was what I can only describe as the most hideous and grotesque creature that I've ever seen. It appeared to be mocking me. I quickly turned off the light and ran into my bedroom. I closed the door behind me and turned to go towards my bed, when suddenly I saw the exact same entity I had previously just seen in the mirror, now hiding underneath my bed, peering out at me. How could this possibly be reality? Have I lost my mind? I turned towards the window so that I could take a look outside at the real world again, only to see the same entity again, hiding behind my window curtains. I went towards my closet and opened it, only to again see the same entity inside, staring right back at me. I shouted at it, "What do you want from me?" It just grinned at me and spoke no reply, with its never-ending fixated eye contact, gazing directly on me. I ran out of my room and headed back downstairs to the living room to see most of my friends spaced out, tripping in their own worlds. A couple of them were in the kitchen, trying to get some food down, but just looked like a couple of savage animals in the moment who were attempting to ravage their portions. I went back into the living room and sat down with my other friends on the couch. I could tell that most of us weren't in the greatest place currently, and that we were all just trying to ride the experience out at this point. One of my friends suggested that we smoke some weed in order to calm down a bit, so I obliged. Upon exhaling the hit, the experience instead ended up blasting off to a whole new level. The visuals at this time were beginning to become so intense that I had no choice but to close my eyes. Upon closing my eyes, all that I witnessed was absolute sheer terror. I could see these jester-like beings all whimsically pointing at me, laughing at me, and mocking me for the current state that I was in. They all had a very dark and external feeling presence to them that didn't feel like a part of me or my mind at all. My only two options at this point were either to open my eyes to the chaotic world unfolding in front of me, or close my eyes to only be greeted by the seemingly evil and sinister jesters again. Both of these options were not great options at all, and I began to feel trapped. Nobody looked like themselves anymore, and the entire room was beginning to turn into something unfamiliar to me. At this current moment in time, I wasn't sure how I was possibly going to make it through the rest of this experience. I began to feel like I was a character from a different reality who was no longer me. I felt like I was in an old movie and was witnessing the scenes playing out in front of me. It was like I was living out an entirely different life, but as someone else. Was this me in a past life? What even was my previous life before this? This was really all that I knew now. By this point, I even forgot my name. The level of confusion and delirium I seemingly experienced in this state is still unmatched to this very day. This continued on for what felt like a lifetime until finally, eventually, I began to remember who I was again and my friends all slowly began coming back to reality as well. We were all fairly speechless for the most part, and decided that we should just call it a night, and we'll discuss everything further tomorrow. We all had quite the stories and experiences to tell each other about the next day, yet no two of us had the same similar experience. I'm not entirely sure what I experienced on that night, but I think I'll be staying away from psychedelics for a while, and just sticking to weed until maybe some unknown point in the future when I'm called to try these substances again. Peace and stay safe out there.